don't forget to follow My Warp Life on Instagram to hear when new things are coming and enter one of our monthly giveaways.
That's right. You know, you can win yourself a t-shirt and a beanie, which I don't have yet, or even a bottle of Kevin Lyman's hot sauce, which I do have, and it's fantastic. So don't forget, if you have any questions for us or topics you want us to discuss, text us at 818-863-6445.
And if you enjoy listening to the conversations with our guests, you can hear the full versions of all the interviews on our Patreon for only $5. We donate all the proceeds to our favorite charities, and you can cancel anytime. We're partnering with our friends at Drink Weird. Drink Weird are the makers of Weird Tea and Weird Water. Weird Tea is delicious, organic tea full of antioxidants made without any preservatives. And Weird Water is fresh spring water sold in recyclable aluminum cans, available in sparkling or flat. Do you want to win a free case of Weird Tea or Weird Water? All you gotta do is tell us your weirdest stories from the Warped Tour. What was the weirdest thing you did? Who was the weirdest artist you saw? Message us on Instagram at My Warped Life and be sure to mention Drink Weird. The weirdest story will win a free case of Drink Weird. Also, if you want to support a good cause, use the code Kevin on drinkweird.com to donate 100% of the proceeds from your order to my foundation, Unite the United, where we create positive change in the industry by supporting local charities, producing events, and participating in community volunteerism events across America. Drink Weird!
Kevin, we've known each other a long time, and one of the things that's always been important to you, and you've always been very involved in politics and getting other people involved in politics. And so this show it's a big part of what makes up Kevin Lyman. So can you remember back when you first got involved with trying while on the Warped Tour to do voting, getting kids to vote?
Prior to Warped Tour, one of the things what we did with Golden Voice, and we brought this up, is that we did a lot of benefit shows and everything. And one of the first movements to get people to register to vote was something called Rock the Vote. You probably remember Rock the Vote. They still exist. So we did some of the first Rock the Vote shows at the Hollywood Palladium. And, I mean, you would have bands like the Chili Peppers and Thelonious Monster and, Pearl Jam came down.
There was a time when MTV had, when the primaries came out or there was a major election, every other thing was rock the vote, rock the vote.
Politics have crossed over into music in many, many ways. Right or left, one of the things we do have in America is voting. Voting is important. And we've tried to figure out why 60% of the people that were between 18 and 24 had been to a concert, but only 30% voted. Now, we saw a big bump in the last election. In 2020, we saw people voting. But every 4 years, we vote on a president. But we vote on midterms every 2 years. There's a midterm between that. So we've got a midterm coming up in 2022. So I thought this would be a great episode to discuss ways that you might be able to get involved in your local community. We hear things now about the suppression of vote or making it harder to vote, but we're working with organizations that are navigating that and trying to get more people out to vote. Whether you're right, left, or anything, getting out to vote is important. Before this, I brought someone in on this episode just to catch up because he was in town. You haven't met Supla.
No.
Supla is a fabulous person who is very engaged in politics. One roots to his family in Brazil. And I got a text from him that said, "Hey, Kevin, I'm in town. Let's get together." So I said, "Okay, I'm super busy, but I'll meet you after school." So went over to my surrogate office at USC is now Rock and Riley's across the street. And I told Xavier, pack up your little backpack and get over here with the recording gear. We're going to talk to Supla. And it's awesome because Supla's one of those people, and the best way to describe him is when Johnny Rotten walked into a room. Or Sid Vicious, or one of these old...
Except Brazilian.
So it was awesome because you're sitting there and this place has a big patio and there's students there and there's professors and people. And my friend Supla shows up and I just loved watching every person, like their drink, they look up because he commands a presence. And I was wondering, what brought him? Because eventually we got turned on to him. But I said, how did you get into my orbit?
I lived a long time in New York City. I did my hardcore years, with a band called Psycho 69. So I got to know all these kids from Agnostic Front, Murphy's Law, well, you name it, Freddie from Madball. I knew all these guys. And I had this crazy band called Psycho 69. But while I was living in America, I said, okay, I got to bring something of my own country here, some Bossanova that I love so much, but I'll have to be able to mix with rock and roll that I also love too, and punk rock. So we created the Punkanova style. And I brought my brother on this journey that he's a fantastic guitar player and sings very well. So I'll play the drums. It will be very easy for us to travel because we thought about everything. So we're in New York playing, and Lisa Brownlee had no idea who she was. She saw us playing and said, what the hell is this? It's like punk and Bossanova. It's like Tom Jobim and whatever, David Bowie coming on here. This is kind of crazy, or this is a great combination, she thought, and then you guys have a label? No? Do you guys want to be in the Warped Tour? I said, what are you talking about? Of course, we're just going back to Brazil. So no, but I think people will like you, and will like you guys. So, and then he gave a shout to Bill and Joe and you. And then I think you guys saw our video, Samba Around the Clock. And then we flew here to LA. We were in New York, and we were so excited. And I have to tell you, Kevin, as this goes out for Joe, you, and Bill. Thank you very much, because it was a great opportunity. You guys really helped us out to make us legit in another country.
You know why? You know why I liked you so much?
No, I have no idea.
There was only two of you.
Oh, there you go.
There was only two mouths to feed.
They had a very unique, interesting story about their lives in Brazil. I've been fascinated by Brazil. I go fishing in the Amazon, but I've always been fascinated about their politics. And it was amazing what he told me where he came from.
My father's dream is to the basic minimum income for everybody in Brazil, because it's really poor. A lot of parts are very poor, and people need just a little bit, just to start their lives, because they have nothing.
He comes from a political family. His father was a member of the Labor Party, just like we have the Democrats and the Republicans. And he was actually an elected official and the Labor Party definitely leans towards the left, a basic income for people in Brazil. He was following these American bands, and we asked him how he got into playing punk rock.
I lived here when I was a kid, but my parents, they used to listen to Brazilian music a lot, and also what was playing on the radio. That was like Don McLean or Carole King. And so they were like they were students, They didn't smoke weed or anything like that. So, but when we went back to Brazil, I started listening to the Beatles, and then I started I saw in a big program in Brazil, like something about the Sex Pistols and the Clash was all together. That really caught my attention with that thing. And then there were bands in Brazil like RDP, Ratos do Porão, Garotos Podres, Rotten Kids. They were like in the movement, doing that kind of saying in your face things like that, All that caught my attention, especially with my father, being in all the slums in Brazil, and involved in the hip hop too, because a lot of kids in hip hop, they never had a voice there, and then they started getting a voice. And I remember bringing the biggest rap singer in Brazil, named Mano Brown from Racionais, took him to the Congress. And he said to all the people there, you guys are in your ties and suits, but this is what's really going on with all the young generation. They're telling the truth what's going on in the slums. And for Brazil to be a big country, we need education, because Brazil was the last country to abolish slavery. So, but when they abolished slavery, it was in a way that, okay, we abolished slavery, but we didn't give it black people no jobs, no anything. I went to a nice school in Brazil, right? Like a private school. I never saw a black person in my class. That's fucking nuts. Never. Till this day. Just now you see like black people like going into doing commercials, because 60% is black and mulattoes in Brazil. So, but all that makes you go into punk rock in a way, and see that. I remember also in 1983, I was 16 years old. I saw at the Ritz was Fishbone and Murphy's Law. I said, what the hell is this, man? And there's some other bands, so like local bands. And I really love that thing. It's like that got my attention about punk rock, seeing right in your face, all these kids saying their problems, their frustrations, or their happiness, just being a kid. So all that really got me into punk rock.
What was the name of his Bossanova punk band?
The Brothers of Brazil. Like, he comes from this political family, and he's getting into punk rock. He's one of those people that all of a sudden he found himself doing something else.
I did a lot of TV shows on MTV too in Brazil. Even Rock of Love, like Papito in Love, was me and 14 ladies in a house. That's embarrassing, but whatever. It's everything is politically correct now. But I said, listen, I told MTV by the time, let's make a show that is going to be a lady and 14 guys. I want to see her like get 14 guys like I did because I kissed all 14 ladies in there, you know. But I said, no, that's not going to work. But why not? You being machismo here, man, you know. So that will give me a little relief, you know. So it's just not a guy and 14 ladies, you know. But that was just like entertainment, you know. I was even the judge for American Idol. That, you know, that's entertainment. That's not that. I mean, it's music, but it's not. It's a different type of thing, you know. Not Papito in Love. That's just nuts. That's nonsense. Whatever. That's fun. Because I'm a respectful guy to the ladies. I'm not like an idiot, you know. I have a girlfriend and everything, and I respect. But for that show, I just said, okay, I'm like girls, Elvis Presley here. You know, that's what I thought, you know. My mom's a big feminist. So, yeah, I'm ashamed of you. She said, all right, man. It's all right.
I mean, he's one of those people that you say, oh, Supla. Like Xavier had like, his mother was like, oh, my friend said you got to hang out with Supla?
So are you saying in Brazil, like he's bananas famous or something?
Bananas famous.
Really?
Yeah. His brother, they're both good-looking guys, but his brother is much more like movie star looks, you know, more traditional Brazilian features. Kind of a duo. You know, you wouldn't realize that sometimes they were related.
They were the Brazilian Kid and Play.
Everyone loved him because, you know, it was just good people that care about people. It was interesting, like, what he's been up to now.
When we started the pandemic, I said, okay, we don't have shows. I'm not doing a TV show or anything. What I'm going to do. So I started reinventing myself on the internet. So I started doing a lot of interviews. I made a setup in my house in the studio so I could play. I brought my band. We would take the test, COVID test all the time. Everybody wears masks. And I interview a lot of people, the same as you're doing with me, live, you know, with people from Monkey, you know, from the Addicts, all kinds of rock and rollers and Bossanova players too, you know. And even my father had interviewed him too. And all that really helped me out to go through the pandemic. And all of a sudden, I had a song called Kung Fu on You. And I was explaining to a reporter where I shot the video. I was at the place. It's a place called Cubatão. And it looks like a Blade Runner kind of place. It's like there's fire everywhere. It's like fabrics. It's really crazy. And I was explaining to him like the dance that I was going to do for the song. So I was like, make me use Kung Fu on You, and I almost punched him. And that went viral. Just went viral all over Brazil.
I want to hear Kung Fu on You.
Kung Fu on You.
How do you say Kung Fu on You in Portuguese? Because does it rhyme the same? I'm sure the song is titled in English.
He's one of these people that people gravitate to, but he's also found how you blend sometimes this humor into getting a message across. And that's what impresses me, that, you know, sometimes you have to bring people in to get a message across, and he's done it very well.
I just wrote a song, Sai Fora Bolsonaro. Get the fuck out, Bolsonaro is our president. He's like worse than Trump. You can check it out. It's a Brothers of Brazil song. It's on YouTube, Sai Fora Bolsonaro. And I just say it the way it is, you know, and all his fans, they curse me. They say all kinds of things that, you know, you're wrong, dude. I don't give a flying fuck, whatever. If you look at the Amazon, there was a time that they burned more forest than ever, because of this guy. He has no clue, I mean, how he's allowing that to happen. We even have a song called Save the Forest. It's another Brothers of Brazil new song, too, Save the Forest. In Portuguese, it's Salve as Florestas. Because all the songs, this new album that we're going to put out, it's all English and Portuguese, the same songs. It's a lot of work because I want to talk to the Brazilian people and also to the people around the world.
His voice is worldwide now. So bringing attention to what's going on in the Amazon. The Amazon is really the heart of the world, what comes out of the Amazon. You know, more medicines, more species, and this president's allowing it to just be destroyed. Deforestation has been a major thing. It's accelerated. We lose more acres of the Amazon now a year than ever in history. Bolsonaro, who runs Brazil, makes Trump look like a nice guy.
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
You know, for me, it hit home because, you know, fishing in the Amazon that I have, we would go out on a boat with this family that ran the boat. And they were lovely people. Barbara that ran the boat and her sons and all worked on this boat. They lived in Manaus, which is the gateway, to the gateway to the Amazon. So all the villages come in and get their supplies, and people go out there fishing, and it's the Amazon. So it's a major port. Well, I found out that their whole family died from COVID. these people that I spent a lot of time with, and Bossanova kind of just like has blown the whole thing off, because you know what? Most of these people were dark-skinned. They weren't the elite. They weren't affected by this. But for me, it hit home because this family I knew is gone. People that so many people knew that visited the Amazon, and they're gone. So I had to ask him a question. Have you ever thought about going into politics?
I got a message from Lula, that was the president of Brazil. It's connected to my mom and dad. And he said it would be very good for you to be there now. But I told him already, I'm already in politics, as an artist, saying all the things that I believe, because it's very different when you jump in the game, being a real politician. One thing is good because you're there to vote for good projects to come in, That's a big difference that you can do that. But on the other hand, when you need a party. So I appreciate a lot of things at the Labor Party, but a lot of things I don't appreciate too. You can't be really yourself, so it's very hard.
It's one way to speak politics and sing about politics, but then there's a whole world of politics.
You just said it, man. You just said it. But it's important to speak and make people think, It's very important to at least debate and never act like you're like superior to anybody with your own ideas. Just be open and listen, because that person might have something interesting that is, even if from a different party, that you will listen to it and say, okay, that makes sense, and don't be a dumbass and just, okay, that's right. So I'm going to turn and be humble and change your mind towards that, what you guys are discussing. Even this left or right party, I'm not even there really. I'm like for what is right is right, in my opinion. To get, in a good place, we need education, and of course, first of all, you need food in the people's stomach and a place to live. But that's why I'm very in favor of the basic minimum income. One day I was discussing with a big farmer in the middle of Brazil, and he said, I'm totally against this because the guy here that works here, he's very lazy. If I give him a basic minimum income, he's not going to work. I said, well, how much you pay him? Oh, I pay him like 300 reais. So you're a scumbag, I told him, because the minimum salary is 1,200, and you're paying 300 to the guy. That's why no wonders why we don't go. You're just exploiting the person. Really. Simple as that. We got to change that. I'm sorry, we got to change that. Because who's really rich is not going to, just got to pay more, man, unfortunately.
We're always consciously aware of politics in music associated with U.S. politics, but it's fascinating to hear it associated with Brazilian politics.
Check out the link in our bio if you'd like to learn more about the Brothers of Brazil. One of the things I work in is I Voted. So iVoted.com is an organization created by Emily White. She was the one who really brought it to my attention that we only had 30% of young people voted, but 60% went to concerts. How do we flip that around? So it started out in 2018 that she would get artists to create events around elections.
I thought of I Voted Festival because I'm originally from Wisconsin, where the 2016 presidential election was decided by 22,000 votes and change. It was decided next door in Michigan that year by 10,000 votes and change. And I'd read that voter turnout was down in Milwaukee, where I'm originally from, particularly amongst young people. And I was like, 22,000 is our basketball arena. So why don't we put together a compelling concert and tie in voting? So that's what we did for the 2018 midterms. It was just an intern and myself. We activated over 150 venues in 37 states to let fans in on election night who showed a selfie from outside their polling place. And all these amazing artists performed. We had Jim James of My Morning Jacket, Playboy Cardi, Maggie Rogers. It was an idea that just spread. So we were planning for a big 2020. I was holding arenas in key states when, of course, the pandemic hit. And as you know, we pivoted and produced the largest single night digital concert in history. And fans RSVP'd to access that election night stream with a selfie at home with their blank and unmarked ballot. And we had Billie Eilish and Trey Anastasio of Fish and Living Color and many more.
Going even farther back, I go, why did you get so involved, or why did you feel this was your mission?
Voting is how we make tangible change. And what I've also learned doing this work is, if you get a celebrity in front of people in Ohio, let's say, and they're just sitting there telling you why it's important to vote, that's not necessarily super effective. What does convince people of the power of voting is community. That could be their religious community. That could be their family community. That could be sports. And you know better than anyone the power of music communities. And I should also add that instead of getting artists and talent that we hope people will like or that we think that they'll like, we literally book the top streaming acts in these key states whose electoral margins are often decided by the size of a concert venue. So it's very fascinating. We're going to have, like classic rock artists and hip hop artists, and it's what people are actually listening to and not what we think that they're listening to.
A lot of people will always say, oh, you liberals, you liberals, you liberals. But this is a bipartisan movement.
Are they doing the same type of programs and registrations and voting for some kind of a ban that would be considered more right?
No one's been turned away. And that's a question from the artists is, oh, you guys are, you don't want us because we don't believe in that. We're like, no, you can be involved. It's important to vote, ultimately voting. Emily was a swimmer, competitive swimmer. And she was also as a manager for Olympic athletes. So she's had a big voice. We were talking about, some of the stuff going on in athletics at this point. She's been vocal with some of her athletes that she manages about some of the rules that are changing in the NCAA.
The fact that college athletes now can have national image and likeness deals is huge. I love seeing, again, I'm a legacy in the sport of swimming, so that's the world I know, but I love seeing all these college swimmers, on Instagram, like being able to share products and get paid for it as they should. But if this is an area you want to learn more about, I do work with this person, but check out Dave Zirin. He's at Edge of Sports on Twitter and other social media. He's the nation's sports editor, and he's written multiple books on these topics about how stadiums will be built in Brazil, for a few World Cup games or Olympic matches and then just abandon. And I also think there's a lot of good ideas out there, like let's keep the Olympics. This might sound a little like not global or international, but let's keep the Olympics in one place so it's a little more sustainable. Los Angeles has been talked about that because, we do have the facilities in LA, we have the hotel rooms and things like that. So I'm all for reform when it comes to the Olympics. And as always, making sure that we're putting the athletes first and foremost, especially financially and doping wise, and not just being like, you're on NBC, isn't that great?
We got on this topic because we were trying to discuss the politics of sports and how did Dubai end up with the World Cup when they're looking at games that are going to be at 120 degrees? Why was China having the Winter Olympics again? And there was a lot of discussion going on around this, but one of the things that was great was in 2020, many of my students got engaged with this. And I asked her, if you're interested in getting involved with I Voted, how can you do this?
Head over to ivotedconcerts.com, send us your resume or LinkedIn. As of this taping, we could definitely use a few more people on the booking team. We're going to be booking talent, per the data of the top trending acts in these states through the end of June. And then we're going to flip to production, and we're going to need a lot of help there, kind of watching down sets, for quality assurance, making sure there's no hate speech, a lot of stuff like that. So as you saw in 2020, we were really a training ground and kind of internship replacement in the world of canceled internships. So if you are looking to, get into the music industry, work in the music industry and are on that professional path, we have a C-suite that's all women. Our overall team is 92% women, non-binary, BIPOC, or LGBTQ+. So we're an extremely inclusive team. And I'm obviously incredibly proud of our work increasing voter turnout, but I'm as proud of the fact that we're really changing the face of live music and the music industry in general.
So how are they funded? They can't just have that many people working this program and not draw some kind of a salary for themselves. How?
No one's drawing a salary.
Really?
It's interesting with voting because corporations, they get really nervous that they potentially alienating one customer.
Occasionally they take a stand like Hobby Lobby or Chick-fil-A.
Right now, we're seeing a lot of that with Ukraine. Brands didn't really take a stand with the Olympics. They still supported the Olympics on television. Will brands start taking a stand? Personally, I believe Pepsi pulling out of the halftime show in the future had a lot to do with their fan base. If you really dig into it, their fan base and I'm just, of course, going to say it, people that lean right got pissed off at Coca-Cola because they took their stand about the voting rights. So they were drinking a lot of Pepsi. So why did Pepsi pull out of the halftime show in the future
I don't know.
after this last one?
Get out. That's a stretch,
No,
Kevin. Come
no.
on.
If you dig into it, why would they? Why would they, Tony? They've been the halftime sponsor for the last 10 to 15 years.
I don't know. Maybe they found out it's a business, and they found out that the bottom line was there was a bad return on investment.
I tend to think personally they took a lot of blowback for promoting a giant hip hop show.
I mean,
For hip hop, they took a huge blowback.
You agree?
Yeah. What? Because why?
And I don't see Pepsi and Coke. I don't see them as red and blue. Really?
Go camping with me and look around the campgrounds. They drink Pepsi.
What was the motto of Pepsi? The new generation, the next generation. They were trying to label Coke as the establishment.
Come camping with me, Tony. Come camping.
How
Let me
is
see.
that?
We
That's
laugh.
a
Me friend laugh.
microcosm.
No, just watch. Who's drinking Pepsi? You start notice.
I don't know, bro. I think it's a stretch. I think Pepsi got out because
Why? Give me a reason after all
They
these
weren't
years
making any
when it was
money.
one of the highest rated shows. They're still going to sponsor
some
the game.
bean counter figured out how much it cost them and what their return on the investment
Well, why
was
would they
and
still
said,
sponsor the
"Screw
game
this."
and not the halftime show after all these years?
I don't know.
But really, kind of the root on actually registering voters is an organization called HeadCount. And I was able to catch up with Andy Bernstein from HeadCount. I've known Andy Bernstein for years. I mean, he's been around the music scene for a long time. It was very interesting how he decided that his passion was going to be registering voters.
I was a reporter covering sports. I did nothing in politics at all. And but I had written a book about the band Fish.
He wrote a book about fish?
Yeah, it was 1,000 pages, just like their sets, about hours.
Jesus.
So I knew my way around the music world a little bit. I knew a few people. That was it. Well, 2003, height of the Iraq War. I, like a lot of other Americans, were getting just really frustrated by the things we were seeing in the world. And I was particularly frustrated by Guantanamo Bay. And I'm a big civil liberties guy. And the idea of throwing people in jail without charges, to me, was the most un-American thing that you could do. So I was upset about that, like many people. And I was interviewing somebody once about nothing to do with that, about sports. And we just started talking about that, just like two people talking about what was on their minds. And when the interview was over, I hung up the phone and I said, I got to stop complaining. I got to do something. What can I do? And I sat there and I stared at my computer and I was like, what can I do? And then I had the idea for HeadCount. I said, if people who go to the same concerts that I go to are voting, well, that's a small difference. That's a small step in the right direction. And maybe that's a change that I can affect. I kind of had the idea and I wrote it out and I shared it with my friend Mark Bernstein, who's in a band called the Disco Biscuits. And I brought probably a 2-page email and he returned it with 2 words, I'm in. And that's how we got it started. And we literally, Kevin, we had no idea what we were doing.
And that's sometimes what it just takes an art. I'm in. An artist just saying, I'm in. Why do we have to go through all this management and thinking about it?
Well, because it's a show business. That's why.
But why? It was an artist just saying, I'm in. And that launched what they did. And what did they do in 2004?
We had a web guy who years later told me he had never really built a website in the way he did, but he built our whole back end system for organizing volunteers. And by February 13th, 2004, we launched. The first conversations kind of happened in December. So we launched very quickly. And by April, we were doing about 25 events a week all around the country. We started with very grassrootsy bands and artists. It was Michael Franti and an artist called Leftover Salmon and the Disco Biscuits and Government Mule. Those were, I think, our first ones. And by the summer, we were working with Fish and The Dead and Dave Matthews and sending people on the road. So it took off pretty quickly. That year, we registered close to 50,000 voters. We were at Bonnaroo and a lot of the big festivals. We produced public service announcements with Dave Matthews and The Dead and Trey from Fish, and those aired on network TV. So we got a lot done fast, very grassroots, very helter-skelter. To this day, I don't know how we did it because we certainly had no processes or systems in place. We were just figuring it out as we went.
They go to concerts and set up a table and they would have paperwork to register to vote.
That's awesome.
It's getting very complicated now because there's rules about how you can register people. They're throwing more and more roadblocks up. So you're talking here, and Andy's talking about leftover salmon and disco biscuits and fish, which are a lot of times looked at as engaged people in politics or movements. You know, it goes back to early on with Amnesty International. Amnesty International, I was like, you need to come out to the Warped Tour. And they were like, oh my God, the Warped Tour. That's too crazy. That's crazy. And I said, look, you go to U2, you go to the Grateful Dead. Those people are already engaged in their political movements and things. You need to come out here. Yeah, it's going to be hot. It's going to be sweaty. But you know what? If you really want to engage people, you got to step out of your boundaries a bit. And when Amnesty International came out, it was their most successful sign-up event in a long time. They're coming out on tour with us. So Andy talked a little bit about their involvement with the Warped Tour.
The work we did with Warped Tour is really relevant. I mean, over the years, I think we did nearly 100 events at Warped Tour, registered, thousands and thousands of people. And we found that a lot of those artists were among the most receptive, and artists like Bad Religion and NoFX, All Time Low, Sleeping with Sirens, Every Time I Die, The Main. These are all artists we've worked with for a while. Youngblood we're out with right now. All artists that have played, your events, Kevin. So for us, it's all about, where are young people? And the jam bands, it's not really a young crowd anymore.
No, but the people in the AARP, they vote.
They also watch Fox News.
That's right.
Rock and punk have just always been really supportive places for HeadCount. We do well at those events. People are interested. I'm really proud of the work we did on Warped Tour going back a few years. And I remember in 2016, we produced a video of just talking to young voters in Warped Tour. And a lot of the themes that we were hearing, this is the summer of 2016, ended up becoming, we were hearing from people as to why they would support Donald Trump. We were hearing from people about why they wouldn't. And a lot of it, after that election in 2016, we went back and looked at that video and said this video really foreshadowed what was going to happen. People weren't necessarily listening to young people. They weren't hearing the concerns. And it did foreshadow the election of Trump, particularly in Pennsylvania, where we shot that video at Montage Mountain in Scranton. The kind of music that really brings out a kind of wide spectrum of young people, and punk and rock really do that, can be a place where you can really, where movements really do start. And those movements sometimes go in directions that are counter to what you might think. Those crowds and those genres of music really, really, really are really important for reaching young people today.
There are certain genres of music that, you can speculate at what type of politics they have. But punk rock and rock is just from all walks of politics, dig this shit. You know what I mean?
There is a whole new wave, Tony, of young, like Deadhead kids. Sans someone sitting in this room with us right now.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna go see Eric Krosnos tonight.
Tony, young people.
Yeah,
I said young people. You just mentioned yourself as a young person.
No, not me. I said Eric. No,
I'm talking about young Xavier. He's a little hippie. Like these little kids, they walk around with their tie-dye.
You do wear that deadhead.
They wear their tie-dye. They're walking around. So there's a whole movement.
Well, God help us. All we need is another boomer generation.
Andy, if you listen to this episode, don't give up on the Grateful Dead and Fish and that, because there's a whole bunch of little hippies running around USC that I see daily. Kat Cody, who you know, who worked for me, that was kind of her first job on the Warped Tour, because they couldn't find someone to go on the road with Warped Tour, 40 days, this kind of thing. So Kat wanted to come out, and she was one of those young people that I kind of identified. I go, okay, come out and register voters. She registered almost 5,000 people that summer. She was jamming. We started building more and more of this relationship where every year it was like Warped Tour, put a great person out there. HeadCount started to help us promote, gave us more marketing. And then we did a small group thing we started doing was called Down to Vote. Down to Vote was kids that weren't yet 18. We would have them fill out a card on the road that was like a birthday card that would be mailed to them on their birthday to remind them to register to vote. If you vote the first year you can, it tends to become a lifetime habit. When people say they don't have time to vote, bullshit. I don't have time to deal with it, bullshit. So it's like we get them engaged young, and that just becomes part of your life.
It's like raising kids, though, too. Like my kid and my wife, when we go to vote, We drag him with us. He stands in line. He just knows that's what he was going to do. And a lot of people didn't have that kind of upbringing. But music is a culture and is a bond. And if you're able to drive that too, maybe it could turn into a lifetime thing as well.
So I did ask him because, I've always, I think, been an optimist about youth. And we don't give the youth enough credit. And I asked, does he have faith in the young people to actually help fix some of these things that might be going on in society?
I definitely have faith in young people. And I definitely believe that things tend to get better over time and not worse. Young people certainly have a lot more at stake than anyone else because they've got to live in the mess for longer. I do think there are real challenges, though. And I think that, the political state of this country right now, I think a lot of people are feeling very negative about it. And young people are historically the first to check out statistically. So we've got a lot of work to do as a country to make sure that all citizens feel heard as cultural leaders, and whether it's, promoters or artists or content creators or media companies, we need to keep civic participation at the forefront. And that's our responsibility as people who are a little bit older, who maybe have the power structures working in our favor and are accessible to us. We've got to use that power to promote civic participation and really ingrain it in our culture. Young people are always the ones who lead cultural movements. And it's not old people, it's young people. But in a modern society where media and digital media in particular is so much of a determining factor, we've got to make sure that we're making all of those things available to young people.
I've heard people say this before, and they always get down on millennials. And all. I think this generation is a lot smarter than our generation. I don't know how tough they are, but they're probably smarter than the Xers. I think they're going to be great.
And, I asked them what HeadCount has been able to do.
This year, our goal is to directly engage 1 million voters. We've registered 1 million voters in our history. When I say directly engage, it's important to know we do a lot more than register voters. What we're really trying to do is get people to vote and be active citizens. So voter registration is the first step. It's definitely not the last step. You'll see us do more with contests. We had some really successful contests in 2020 where the way to enter the contest was to check your registration status. We had one where a YouTube content creator gave away 5 Teslas, and we had over 500,000 people check their status. Over 2/3 of those people turned out to vote. So you'll see more of that from HeadCount.
One of the coolest things about HeadCount, Tony, and you may want to sign up and get out there at a table, you get to go to concerts for free. They're doing shows all over the country, and they need people to get involved. You go down with the table, they have local people, you come in and help, and you usually get to catch part of the show.
Now, I imagine that they're ramping up again with all these shows. Everybody's doing a show now, trying to make up for the last 2 years. Is HeadCount ramping up for...
Oh, yeah, HeadCount needs people. So if you're listening and you would love to get involved with this organization, it's a fabulous organization. I asked Andy how you can get involved.
If you want to come to concerts and register voters with us, that's the easiest thing to do. You just sign up you hit the volunteer button, give a little bit of information, and you'll start hearing about concerts in your area or festivals in your region that you can come and volunteer at. You get to see a show for free. You get to meet a lot of like-minded people and do something good. For artists, there's also information on our website on how to get involved, and we're really an open door. You don't need to be playing huge amphitheaters to work with HeadCount. We have an ambassadors program that any musician can be a part of.
We've put the link in our bio, Tony. It's headcount.org.
You caught me off guard on the last episode that we did, and I threw out one of my go-to lovely... I'm not as hip as you, Kevin, with my...
I didn't ask you who you're listening to now.
No,
but you want to offer it up?
No, I just said last episode.
I know, but what do you think? I'm going to ask you again?
No.
After listening to that?
I was leading up to ask you, for crying out loud. I prefaced it by saying I'm not as hip as you, and in the last episode. So, Kevin, what are you listening to?
Well, actually, I've been getting a lot of stuff sent to me from my friend Ryan Soroka, who's an agent at the UTA agency. And he sent me an artist named Lauren Sanderson. You'd like a little bit of Amy Winehouse in the background, a little influences and stuff like that. It's very, very cool, and I think you'd enjoy it, Tony.
We'll have to go check her out. She's tatted up for sure.
Absolutely crazy, stupid, local, obnoxious.
Here, hit the second one. Hit number 2.
Do the third song, Gay for Me.
One's got 4 million listens, but I like it. There's a lot of vex on her vocals. But you can tell she's got a voice.
Tony sounded like Bette Midler the other day. There's these Bette Midler covers in here.
Oh, yeah.
Use all the effects. You can tell.
Anything you need.
Xavier looks at us. Bette Midler, who's that?
Bette Midler, who's that?
I got nothing.
Over the shoulder boulder holder? You never heard of that, kid?
Yeah, okay.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Get involved. There's other voting organizations out there. Look them up. Get involved in your community because the only way you count is if you vote or shut your fucking mouth.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and leave us a review and tell us how wonderful we are.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and any of those other TikTok. We got to do some TikToks, Tony. It's been a while.
If you want more My Warp Life content, subscribe on Patreon. There's plenty of content. We don't stop talking.
And you know what we're going to do, Tony? We're going to grab a couple bottles of wine, and we're just going to sit down, and we're going to tell some stories that are more choppy.
We got to edit that, though, because
No.
I know we get a little...
No.
A couple things slip here, a little there.
I don't care. What, like, I'm not going to get a job?
I have a career. I have a career.
You had a career.
Yeah, no. I know. What are we? Almost episode 30 here, right? Yeah. I just eventually somebody's going to start listening to these. I got to be careful.
Oh, yeah. We're going to knock it out in 2 weeks. We're going to get together, and we're just going to tell a bunch of things that are only going to be available on Patreon.
It's going to be Chardonnay records all day long. Can you give me a rim shot at least? Padum-cha. Hang in there, kid.
I'm no drummer.
Take it out with a rum shot.
Take it out. Come on.
Ta-da.
Nice.
No, you got to... Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. It's a Friday.
I'm not a drummer.
You did it!
Yay.
Woohoo!
You're out of work, Diego.